I had a breakthrough recently that showed me that I was trying to do the impossible. I was demanding the impossible of myself. And I wanted to share it because I think many spiritual people, without realizing it, we are demanding something of ourselves that just isn't possible. It can't be done. And it shouldn't be done. And this particular insight breakthrough relates to me realizing that I had a misunderstanding of the final initiation of the Buddha. So this is what I'm going to explain here, but I think it's valid enough to give you a little bit of background for how this happened. So not so long ago I received this advertisement on Facebook, a last-minute cruise ship deal, half price. And it was a cruise, we could get it for half price, and it started in Copenhagen, which is just a few hours drive from where we live. My wife had never been on a cruise ship, and so we hadn't had a vacation for a while, so we thought, okay, this is feasible, let's do it. So we signed up, and for the first 4 days on a cruise ship, we really enjoyed it. It was really nice. We went to Sweden, Germany, the Norwegian fjords, saw a lot of beautiful scenery, and then, of course, on the 4th day, I got diarrhea. And when I say I got diarrhea, you're probably thinking about the garden variety. But this was, quite frankly, the worst diarrhea I've ever had. I didn't throw up much, but I spent an inordinate amount of time in the bathroom. And so, just to show you, in the first 3 days, I lost 4 kilo. And in 5 days, I lost 6 kilo before I started building up again. I had a situation where one night I didn't really sleep much, so I slept a couple of hours. The next day I go to the ship's doctor, and he says it's a bacterial infection, which I guess is a nice word for food poisoning, and he gives me antibiotics. But the antibiotics messed up my stomach, so I didn't sleep at all the second night. So here I am at the end of the 3rd day. I've slept a couple of hours over 2 nights. And I'm thinking, I don't remember ever feeling worse. And it's not like I was sick, I had great pain or anything like that, but I just felt so uncomfortable in my body. And I don't remember ever in my life feeling worse. And the thought came to me, like clear as a bell, you're on the edge of a breakdown. You could lose it. You are this close to losing it. And I thought, okay. So I lay down, closed my eyes, and then I thought, okay, what does that mean if I lose it? What does that mean? And what immediately came to me was, of course, I could lose it emotionally. So I could start crying, I'd start screaming and yelling, I can't stand this anymore, and this and that. And then I thought, but okay, I am really feeling very bad. Would it be such a disaster if I lost control of my emotions? Because maybe it would make me feel better, or maybe after a while it would wear off, and then once the emotions calm down again, as they always do, what would be the big deal? But then, of course, I immediately realized, oh no, it was a big deal, because in my mental mind I had these mental constructs. And I realized when I looked at my life, I could see I've had that tendency in my whole life to think that I should be able to control myself, and that my mind, my thoughts should be able to control my emotions. But as I was lying there, I thought, this can't be just this lifetime. And of course I've had a sense before that I've had embodiments in the East, but this time I really sensed that I have had a long string of embodiments in Eastern traditions, whether it's the Indian Guru tradition or whether it's Buddhism. But it's all been these traditions where you're seeking to discipline and control the mind. So I realized I had this very long momentum of this, and I had this mental construct that I should be able to control my mind, including my emotions. And then after having pondered this for a while, I thought, you know, okay, I know that everything that goes on in my mind relates to my self-image. So then I rose up to the identity level, and I realized that I had this construct of myself as a spiritual person who should be able to be in control. And as I pondered this, I didn't really ponder it. I didn't really analyze it. I just opened myself up to intuitively seeing it. And the image that came to me was an image I've talked about in several videos. Gautama Buddha was on the brink of going into nirvana. But he had a final initiation to pass, and it was that he had to sit under a tree and be confronted by the demons of Mara, the forces of this world. And they were allowed to do anything they could think of to try and get him to react to them. And my understanding had always been that because he had no attachments, he didn't have a reaction to them, and therefore whatever they did, he didn't react. And therefore he passed the initiation. And of course, my understanding today is that the reactions come from these subconscious cells we have, so it's a matter of dissolving these subconscious cells. And it was not that this was invalid. This is perfectly valid. The only way the Buddha could avoid reacting to the demons of Mara was that he had no attachments. But then I realized that in my mind, I had this image that no attachments and no reactions basically meant no feelings and no thoughts. And in a sense, no sense of identity related to the world. And what came to me was this image that essentially what I've been trying to do on the spiritual path for 48 years is to get myself into this state of mind where I have no feelings and thoughts. And I just saw that this is impossible. And it's not necessary. It's not constructive. Because what I had essentially been trying to do was to turn myself into a Buddha statue, not a living Buddha. And in Korea, for example, they have these beautiful temples with these 5-meter tall Buddha statues that are completely covered in gold leaf, golden Buddhas. And of course, a statue like that has no reaction to the world, has no feelings, no thoughts. But the Buddha wasn't a statue when he passed the initiation. He was a living Buddha. And that meant his emotional body was functioning, his mental body was functioning, his identity body was functioning. He just didn't have any structures in there based on separation and duality that the demons of Mara could use to pull on him. But what I saw was that didn't mean he had no activity in his emotional, mental, and identity bodies. And what I suddenly thought was that I had been thinking, or there was this self, of course it was a separate self that was thinking, that I should stop all these activities in order to be non-attached to the world. And it was essentially as if I was trying to tell my body or force my body to not breathe, not have a heartbeat, not have metabolism, not do any of the things that a physical body does. In other words, have no activity. It was essentially dead, right? And this, of course, would be not very constructive for very long. But I was trying to do the same with my emotional body, my mental body, my identity body. Basically deaden them, so there was no activity. And I suddenly saw how, first of all, impossible it was, but also how unnecessary it is, because as long as you are in embodiment, you're going to have an emotional body. And the emotional body is designed to interact with the world. It's not designed to be dead. It's designed to interact with the world. And that means there's always going to be some emotional activity, because the emotional body is interacting with whatever impulses come from the outside, and it also has some internal workings. So there's always going to be this ebb and flow of emotions, oscillation of emotions. It's like, so I realized that even when the Buddha was sitting there confronted with the demons of Mara, it wasn't that he had no emotional activity. His emotional body was still vibrating, oscillating, but it just wasn't reacting to anything. And the reason it wasn't reacting was, of course, there was no subconscious cells that were both in the emotional, mental, and identity bodies. So I realized the same thing with thoughts. You know, there are these Eastern teachings or spiritual teachings talk about, oh, the mind should be empty of thoughts. We should be able to empty the mind. And there are, of course, also spiritual teachers who say this is impossible and this is not necessary. But there are some of these traditions that the goal is to discipline the mind so you have no thoughts. But I realized my mental body is designed to constantly interact with the world. There's always going to be some thoughts, some evaluation, what's happening. Is there something I need to do? Is there something I need to react to? And this and that. And the same thing at the identity level. I have a certain sense of identity as a being in the world, relating to the world. This doesn't mean I'm identified with this, even though it's in my identity body. You can come to a point where the conscious you has disidentified itself from the four lower bodies. So you know you're not your physical body, you know you're not your emotions, your thoughts, or your sense of identity. But you still have it as long as you're in embodiment. And thinking I had to dial this back to zero was just a misunderstanding, I realized. I just saw it. And it was like this instant shift. And so I realized that I can allow myself to have emotions, to have thoughts, to have a sense of identity. I can allow myself to interact with the world. In fact, thinking I should stop this is a misunderstanding of what the spiritual path is about. And so I realized that there is a difference between interacting with the world and reacting to the world. And so I realized that, let's take the emotional body. So at any moment, right now I'm sitting here, there is no particular outer stimulation. I'm looking at a camera. But still it's appropriate that my emotional body is active, evaluating. What if there was a certain sound from the outside? What could that mean? So there is emotional activity. And there is nothing wrong with me being in the world, experiencing a difficult situation, and having an emotional reaction to it, even a strong emotional reaction. The trick is that I allow the emotions to be what they are. Emotions are like water. So water is easily stirred up, but once it's not stirred anymore, it quickly goes back to calm. So if I allow my emotions to be stirred up and allow them to go back to calm, what happens to the water when it goes back to calm? It's like it was never stirred up. There was never a wave there. And that's what is the challenge with the emotional body, to allow it to have emotions, allow them to fall back down without creating any ongoing pattern. And this, of course, is what I could see that I had been doing my whole life and probably for lifetimes, because I wasn't allowing my emotions to just stir up and fall down, because my mental body had this structure that there are certain things that shouldn't happen in the emotional body. Basically, that my emotions shouldn't react to the world or shouldn't interact with the world. So there was this mental structure that now carried over. Even after the emotion was gone, there was still a structure in the mental mind. And this, of course, went all the way to the identity mind. That I should be this Buddha statue sitting there, having no interaction with the world. And it really, it's difficult to describe how big of a shock this was for me, because this self still was very strong. It still had a very strong pull on me. But immediately when I saw it, I shifted out of it, and I could see that it was just a self. But I could also see it was very old. It was built upon over many lifetimes. So it wasn't just an easy thing to get rid of. So I've of course been working on it since, and I'm still working on it. But I still felt it was time to share this, because I think it is definitely something to consider for people who have been on the spiritual path for a long time. And I think many people who are spiritual today, as I said, we didn't just become spiritual in this lifetime. We have been spiritual for many lifetimes, and you look back a few hundred years and you say, if we were spiritual people, where would we have chosen to embody? And in many cases that would have been in the East, in some kind of Indian tradition or in some kind of Buddhist tradition. And you can see that they have this momentum that I'm describing of feeling that the mind should be in control of the emotions, or the mind should be in control of itself. And there are, of course, alternatives to this. There are, of course, some masters that talk about what I'm talking about here, which I've actually read, but it didn't register. I didn't get it when I read it. I understood it intellectually, but I didn't see the self that I had that was overriding it and thinking, yes, of course you have to discipline the mind. And so I'm not saying that it isn't valid to have some discipline of the mind, but if you look at all of my videos, what I talk about over and over again is this. You have a structure in the mind, and it's that structure that's causing your suffering. These subconscious selves. And so you have two ways of dealing with this. You can try to use the mind that created the selves to suppress these particular selves by creating other selves to suppress them. But then you're still in the mind. You're still using the mind. The alternative is to engage in this process of resolving the selves, resolving the psychology, so that instead of adding to the pressure in the subconscious mind, instead of adding to the selves, you're dissolving them. And now you don't need to discipline the mind because there's nothing pulling the mind into certain patterns. And I can see that I've been, even up until this point, been trying to do that, using the faculties of the mind to control the mind. But at the same time, I've also been engaged in this process for a long time of dissolving these selves. It's just that there was this very big self that I hadn't seen. And now that I've seen it, I can of course work on it, and I am. I just thought it was, in a sense, it was amazing to me that, I mean, it shouldn't really be, but it's still amazing to me that with all of the insights I have about these subconscious selves and how I've been working on them for years now, I still hadn't seen the self. I mean, it was a big one. It was like the 300-pound gorilla in the room, and I still hadn't seen it. And I thought that made me pause, and really realize that until we're ready to see something, we can't really see it. But of course, we can become aware that there's something we haven't seen, and we can start looking at it from different angles and asking questions about it. And so I hope this can be helpful to some people and inspire you, and I also hope it can compensate if I have misled people into thinking that they should do what I thought I had to do, turn myself into a Buddha statue instead of a living Buddha. Because it really is a matter of being alive while we are alive.